There is a moment, and you may have already lived it, when you close a tab, step back from a conversation, or simply stop raising your hand in rooms that used to feel important to you. You do not make an announcement. You do not write a farewell. You just quietly go. And then, as the days pass, you notice something that surprises you. No one seems to have noticed. The debate continues without you. The noise fills in the space you left without a ripple, and you are left wondering whether your presence ever mattered at all, or whether the whole enterprise was something you were never actually part of. Not really. If this is where you are, I want you to stay with me here. Because what is happening to you is not withdrawal, and it is not failure, and it is certainly not apathy. What is happening is something far more significant and far less understood than most people around you will ever acknowledge. You are experiencing the peculiar condition of the person who sees too clearly to keep pretending. And the world, in its infinite appetite for noise, has very little space for people like you. What we call public debate today has become something almost unrecognizable from what that phrase once promised. It promised exchange, the genuine collision of perspectives, the kind of friction that produces light. What we have instead is performance, and not even especially skillful performance. It is the performance of conviction without the substance of thought. It is the ritual of position without the humility of inquiry. And you, at some point, began to see through it. Not because you are superior, because you were paying attention. If this perspective is resonating with you, consider subscribing. I explore these territories every week, and I would be honored to have you along. Hannah Arendt, who thought more carefully about public life than almost any thinker of the 20th century, drew a distinction that most of us have entirely forgotten. She distinguished between genuine political action and what she called mere behavior. Action for Arendt was something rare and precious. It was the capacity of a human being to begin something truly new, to insert themselves into the world in a way that disclosed who they genuinely were, not what role they were playing, not what tribe they belonged to, not what performance was expected of them, but who they actually were at the level of their own irreducible individuality. Behavior, by contrast, was simply the execution of patterns. It was predictable, repetitive, and fundamentally hollow. It could be impressive, it could even be loud, but it disclosed nothing real about the person performing it. Watch the public debate that surrounds you and ask yourself honestly, how much of what you see is action in Arendt's sense, and how much is behavior? How much of it is the genuine appearance of a thinking, feeling, questioning human being, and how much of it is simply the execution of a script that was written before the conversation even began? The answer, if you look carefully, is almost uniformly the same. What passes for debate is almost entirely behavior, tribal behavior, performative behavior, the behavior of people who have decided what they believe before they speak, and who enter the conversation not to think but to win, not to understand but to confirm. And here is what happens to the person who has not yet decided. Here is what happens to the person who is genuinely uncertain, who holds their own positions tentatively, who finds the world complicated and is honest about that complication. They enter the conversation and almost immediately feel a particular kind of loneliness, because the conversation is not designed for them. The conversation is designed for certainty. It rewards confidence and punishes hesitation. It amplifies the loudest voices and makes invisible the most nuanced ones. And the person who is actually thinking, who is actually trying to understand, finds themselves surrounded by people who have stopped thinking and replaced thought with performance. I know many of you watching have never spoken about this to anyone. You have carried this sense of alienation quietly, wondering if something is wrong with your ability to participate, wondering if everyone else finds it as easy as they make it look, to be that certain, that vocal, that unbothered by complexity. Let me ask you directly, How long have you felt like a stranger in rooms that everyone else seems to find comfortable? And if that question lands somewhere true in you, I want you to share it in the comments below. Not because I need the engagement, but because someone else watching this right now needs to know they are not alone in this feeling. If words feel difficult, just type this: I stop pretending. That is enough. Because when you do, you give someone else permission to say the same thing. And that permission, that small act of honest witness, is worth more than 1,000 confident performances. The withdrawal that we are talking about, the quiet exit of thoughtful people from public conversation, is not accidental, and it is not a problem to be solved with better communication strategies. It is a response. It is, in fact, a rational and even a spiritually significant response to a set of conditions that make genuine thought almost impossible to sustain in public. And if we want to understand why it is happening, we have to be willing to look honestly at what public debate has become and what it demands of the people who participate in it. What it demands, above all else, is the suppression of genuine uncertainty. To participate fully in the dominant modes of public conversation today, you must be willing to hold your positions with a certainty you do not actually feel. You must be willing to speak as though the complexity you encounter in private thought has resolved itself into clean, shareable, defensible claims. You must be willing to perform conviction, and for a certain kind of person, a person who takes thinking seriously, who understands that genuine understanding always comes with reservations. This performance is not simply difficult. It is a kind of violence against the very process of thought that makes them who they are. Arendt understood this. She wrote about the space of appearance, the public realm, as the place where human beings could be seen and heard in their full individuality. But she also recognized how fragile that space was, how easily it collapsed into what she called the social, the realm of conformity, the place where what mattered was not what you genuinely thought, but whether you belonged, whether you were on the right team, whether your performance was sufficiently consistent with the expectations of your tribe. The collapse of the political into the social, for Arendt, was not a minor inconvenience. It was a kind of death, the death of genuine plurality, the death of the space where real thinking could occur in public. What we are living through now is precisely that collapse, and it is nearly complete. The public realm, where human beings were supposed to appear in their irreducible particularity, has become a place where what is rewarded is conformity to type, loyalty to position, fluency in the grammar of whichever tribe you belong to, and the people who cannot or will not perform this conformity, the people who find themselves genuinely uncertain, genuinely curious, genuinely in the middle of thinking rather than at the end of it, they are not driven out. They are simply made invisible. Their presence creates discomfort in a system that has no category for them. And so they leave. Not because they have given up on truth, because they have refused to pretend they have already found it. Here is something worth sitting with. The departure of thoughtful people from public life is often described as a loss of civil courage. We hear it said that the quiet ones should speak up, that silence is complicity, that withdrawal is a luxury that democracy cannot afford. And there is something in this that sounds correct, that has the shape of seriousness. But look more carefully. What is actually being demanded when we say this? We are demanding that people enter a conversation that has been structured to consume them. We are asking the genuinely uncertain to take on the performance of certainty. We are inviting the complex thinker to simplify themselves down to the level that the system can process. And we are calling this civic participation. What if it is not civic participation at all? What if what we are calling withdrawal is actually a form of refusal? A refusal to degrade the quality of one's thought in order to make it palatable to an environment that cannot process real thinking. What if the person who goes quiet is not failing their responsibility to the conversation, but is actually protecting something that the conversation would destroy if they stayed? Consider what genuine thinking requires. It requires time. It requires the willingness to be wrong. It requires a tolerance for ambiguity that extends across days and weeks, not just the span of a single argument. It requires the capacity to hold a position tentatively, to say, I currently believe this, but I am not certain, to change one's mind not because social pressure demanded it, but because new understanding arrived. None of these qualities are compatible with the speed and the temperature and the tribal structure of contemporary public debate. All of them are systematically punished by the environments where that debate occurs. So the thoughtful person exits. And here is the part that almost no one acknowledges. No one calls them back. Not because they are not missed, but because the system does not actually need them. The debate continues just as loudly without them. Positions are held. Teams are maintained. Performances go on. The absence of genuine thought creates no visible vacuum because the debate was never really about thought to begin with. It was about something else entirely. About belonging, about identity, about the management of anxiety through the assertion of certainty. And the person who would have introduced actual complexity, actual uncertainty, actual openness to being changed, they were never really part of that project. They were always, in a certain sense, already outside it, even when they were present. This is what I want you to understand about your own withdrawal, if you have experienced it. You did not leave the conversation. The conversation left you. Long before you stepped back, the space that would have made your presence meaningful had already been eliminated. The conditions under which you could have appeared as you actually are, uncertain, searching, genuinely open, were dismantled before you arrived. What you are mourning is not the conversation you abandoned. It is the conversation that was never built. If what I am sharing here resonates with something you have been sensing but could not quite articulate, I want you to know you are not alone in this. There are many of us who have sat with this particular loneliness, who have felt the strangeness of seeing clearly in a context that seems to punish clarity. I make these videos for people who are ready to go deeper, who need more than simple answers, who are willing to sit in the discomfort of genuine questions. If that is you, consider subscribing. I will be here every week with another exploration. And I would be genuinely honored to have you here as part of this community of people who have refused to pretend. Hit that subscribe button if this feels like home. And tell me in the comments what you are carrying into this reflection. I read every single one. What is the way through this? Not back into the debate as it currently exists. That would be a regression, not a return. The way through is something more subtle and more difficult. Arendt spoke of natality, the capacity built into human existence for genuine new beginnings, for the insertion into the world of something that was not there before. The withdrawal of thoughtful people from degraded public space is not the end of the story. It is the pause before a different kind of beginning. Because the person who has stepped back from performance has not lost their capacity for genuine appearance. They have only refused to appear in conditions that would misrepresent them. The question is not how to return to the debate that excluded you. The question is what kind of conversation you can create or sustain or inhabit that preserves the quality of thought that makes your presence worth anything. And this is a harder question because it does not resolve into a platform or a strategy. It resolves into a commitment to a certain quality of attention, a refusal to simplify what is genuinely complex, a willingness to remain in uncertainty without the consolation of tribal belonging, and a trust that this quality of attention, maintained over time, produces something real, even when it cannot be easily demonstrated to others. You left the room that was too loud to think in. That was not a failure of courage. That was courage of a different and more demanding kind. The courage to refuse to perform. The courage to remain uncertain in a world that rewards certainty with belonging and punishes uncertainty with invisibility. And the question now is not whether you were right to leave. You were. The question is what you are building in the quiet. What kind of seeing you are cultivating in the space that opened when you stopped pretending to see things you did not see. That space, if you can inhabit it honestly, is not a consolation prize for the person who could not handle the debate. It is the ground from which something genuinely new becomes possible. It is, in the deepest sense, where the real conversation begins.